Hi, my name is Troy Zahn, and my presentation will be on security threats of blockchains. And I wanted to start off with this quote from IBM, which states, "While blockchain technology produces a tamper-proof ledger of transactions, blockchain networks are not immune to cyber attacks and fraud." And essentially what I think this quote is alluding to is the fact that blockchains may be infallible in theory, but there are opportunities for it to be abused, and we'll see how that's done later. But first, we need to answer the question about what exactly is a blockchain. A blockchain is essentially a giant linked list that grows over time as new nodes and blocks get appended to the end. Each block contains a unique hash that acts as a fingerprint for the data inside, and each block also contains the hash of the previous block, therefore maintaining the chaining effect and going on until, well, forever, I guess. Altering the contents of a block would lead to a different hash, which essentially would be like creating a new block. This helps prevent tampering since a bad actor would need to tamper with a block, then compute a new hash for every block after it in the chain. And I provided a little visual here. So the first block in a blockchain is called the Genesis block and is unique because it does not have a hash to the previous block, but everyone else does. So as you can see here, this is block 0's hash, this is block 0 to the Genesis, and then block 1 would have block 0's hash, but also its own hash on the right side there, and then so on and so forth. And each one of these acts as a sort of fingerprint. Block 1's hash is a fingerprint for the data inside. It would be generated based off of the timestamp, the data, and whatnot. So what's actually stored on a block? Well, anything really, as long as it can fit inside the allocated space of the block on the specific chain. Historically, blocks have contained financial transactions of a specific currency associated with the chain. For example, a block on the blockchain for Bitcoin would have a receipt saying Bob paid Sally 5 Bitcoin, or so on and so forth. However, in recent years, the application of blockchains have increased to include things such as small programs, called smart contracts, or links to assets such as images. Now, the actual image normally is not stored on the chain, and that's just because image files are too large. Some devoted members of the community even want to put things such as medical records on blockchains. We'll go over why this might not be a very good idea. Now, there are some systems in place to make sure that the data inside is not tampered with. To help prevent a bad actor from simply brute forcing a blockchain to say what it wants, so go back 50 blocks, change something, and then do that thing where I talked about where you recalculate hashes, which isn't actually that hard to do on modern systems. The entire blockchain is distributed, which means there are a bunch of copies out there for however many people want to participate in it. And in order for a new change to go through, all of them, or at least a majority of them, have to agree to allow that change to go through. Additionally, most chains put a timer on how long it takes to append a new block on the chain. This is done via participating members, quote unquote miners, you probably heard that before, validating transactions via computing something mathematically hard. This is called proof of work. So what are the vulnerabilities of blockchains? The first kind of vulnerability are structural vulnerabilities. Despite the plethora of mitigation protocols on blockchains, their structure isn't 100% safe because nothing ever really is. There exist a few, albeit minimized, vulnerabilities baked into them. First off, I might have alluded in the beginning, the 51% attack. We talked about how only the majority of the distributed network has to agree to add something in. So if a bad actor is able to get a hold of 51% of the network, they can essentially say whatever they want on the blockchain. Another kind of structural vulnerability is the double spending attack, trying to spend the same coin twice. There are techniques to prevent against this, such as revoking the second transaction from taking place. However, this puts the burden on validation on the receiver instead of the sender. Also requires the receiver to wait for a few more transactions to assure they actually were paid. Combined with the 51% attack, this can be a simple way for an attacker to make money. Now, in a regular system where we pay money with a bank, this kind of thing can happen, but there's a system in place to charge the sender of that money a fee for overdraft. And there's a lot more accountability there. With this one, if you're receiving money from crypto, you have to be mathematically sure that you actually got it, which usually means I think for cryptocurrency, for Bitcoin, it was around wait for 4 or 5 blocks to go past. Otherwise, it could get revoked because it was an actual double spending. A network-based attack, a routing attack, happens by switching the destination for information across the network. An attacker can intercept data intended for another user. This was done in 2014 when an attacker intercepted blocks mined by miners and presented them as their own, thus gaining the reward, the payment for verifying transactions. This kind of attack can be prevented using safe routing protocols that utilize certificates. And even more structural vulnerabilities are the private key security attacks. If there's mistakes in the implementation of the public key cryptography on the chain, then it can be possible for an attacker to obtain a user's private key via their public key. If this happens, then the attacker can come into possession of any assets that the user has, their cryptocurrency and wallet primarily. And another type is a poorly written smart contract. Smart contracts, which are programs that run on the blockchain, can be used for all sorts of things, including handling more complicated transactions such as loans and interest payments and so on and so forth. If there are contracts have security flaws, they can be exploited and the results can be disastrous. Such was the case with the DAO, where a hacker stole $50 million worth of cryptocurrency, the cryptocurrency Ethereum, and led to the split of the Ethereum blockchain, where essentially, it was last spring, they launched the DAO, and right when it launched, the hacker exploited it and routed themselves 50 million, but they were able to backtrack it, split the chain. So now there is one chain where that still happened, and that's, for some people, they believe that's the legitimate Ethereum chain, and the other one is the one that we know of as actual Ethereum. Now we get to conceptual vulnerabilities. Unlike structural vulnerabilities, conceptual vulnerabilities are flaws with the ideas behind blockchains and cryptocurrencies, rather than the ways we implement them. Can't easily fix them by just changing the way we code or adding some fancy network protocols. They require a fundamentally different system to be addressed. Some of these only appear on chains supporting things that other than just the exchange of cryptocurrency, such as those that deal with the exchange of non-fungible tokens, NFTs. NFTs differ from regular crypto fungible tokens because each one is unique, making the tokens identifiable. This leads to the first conceptual flaw, privacy. One of the biggest selling points of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency was the ability to anonymously exchange money virtually, the same way we would do with cash in real life. With the introduction of NFTs, however, this is no longer true. The anonymous part is no longer true. Since the key is connected to the asset is publicly known, the transaction history of the said asset is easily tracked, meaning it's possible to find out information about wallets connected to purchasing/selling NFTs. Now, I want to state it's a public-private key, so they can know about what the wallet is doing publicly, but they can't gain access to the wallet via this way. But this makes it possible to have detailed information about notable NFT transactions, such as those sold for high prices or by celebrities. The system is made to be accessible by anyone. This is fine when the thing you are trading in is a frankly ugly drawing of a monkey, but remember, some people say that we should be using this technology to store things such as medical records. Storing sensitive information on a blockchain would mean that everybody could access them at any point in time. They couldn't change them, but they could see them, which is obviously less than ideal in a lot of cases. Furthermore, the public key to a crypto is public, which means anyone can send things to a wallet without the need for permission. This sounds fine when all you can send is money, but when you consider the fact that you are now able to send digital media and programs, things can get sketchy very fast. Another problem is with permanency. Anything put on a blockchain is very hard to take off. This leaves blockchains very vulnerable to scammers, particularly those pulling off social scams like phishing scams on the traditional web. Remember, the biggest security flaw in any system are the humans interacting with it. The problem with this is there is no central authority acting in defense of the naive/vulnerable. And once a transaction is completed, it cannot be taken back. Banks aren't perfect, but at least they occasionally are able to catch fraudulent activity and freeze an account before it is completely drained. So if you're you're not a crypto whiz and you get scammed into giving someone your private key for your wallet, they can drain it, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. It's on the chain. It's meant not to be taken off. Maybe this might happen if you gave someone your bank account information, but there's a chance that the systems would catch it, freeze it, and no harm would be done. And there's even more problems with this. And because remember when we said it was possible to send things to people's crypto wallets without their permission? One of these things you can send as small programs. And if you combine those two facts, you can see how it's going to go down. There's a pretty popular scam that involves sending an NFT to a user's wallet, and this NFT is a Trojan containing malicious code. Once the user interacts with the NFT in any way, opening it, moving it, or even deleting it, it begins draining the user's wallet. This scam doesn't even require the user to be naive and unknowingly download the virus. Anyone can easily fall for a scam like this. And of course, since the blockchain is permanent, there is no way to reverse this, as we previously stated. So what's the conclusion? Basically, we need to proceed with caution. Just because the logic built into the structure of blockchains is sound doesn't mean the logic behind their use cases is as well. There are proposed uses of blockchains that should never be considered, i.e. putting medical records on there, which is a very private thing, should not be distributed to a lot of people. As well as security flaws that need to be addressed before any form of widespread adoption can/should occur. Again, a lot of the structural stuff has been addressed. The 51% attack is very hard to do on large blockchains such as crypto or Ethereum, but small blockchains are particularly vulnerable to it. This combined with the non-security issues with the technology, the usefulness of the assets being traded on the network, lead to my personal belief that blockchains have a long way to go before I would consider them a worthwhile technology. Thank you for listening. Here's the sources. Have a good day.